We're happy to be presenting to you as part of the SIA's Industry and Intelligence program of the Outdoor and Snow Show. And while we're sorry we aren't all together in Denver, we look forward to next year hopefully being there with you. I'm Aaron Parker. I'm a partner at Finnegan. Finnegan is one of the largest intellectual property focused law firms in the world. I'm the leader of our firm's mechanical practice group, and I focus my time on patent and trade secret litigation and client counseling. I'm also the co-leader of our firm's sports, fitness, and outdoor working group. I have here with me several of my colleagues, and I'll let them introduce themselves now.
Thanks, Aaron. My name is Beth Farrell. I am also a partner in the DC office at Finnegan. I have been at Finnegan for 13 years, and my practice specializes primarily in design patents, although I do have some experience with utility patents in the computer space.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Chung. I'm also a partner at Finnegan, and my practice focuses on IP litigation as well as strategic IP counseling. Along with Aaron, I work in the sport, fitness, and outdoor recreation working group. I'm pretty bummed we can't be there in person for the SIA show. We've been there many years before. One interesting fact, I think this year, my eldest is 2.5, so I'm going to try to get him to start snowboarding, but we may get him to start skiing if my wife decides that's the best way to go.
Hi, everyone. It's Danny Audi, and I head up the trademark and copyright and advertising practice at Finnegan. Like Dan, I too wish I was there with you all, have an opportunity to meet in person and hit the slopes together. Hopefully that will become reality 2022. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. I hope you enjoy our presentation.
Well, thanks, guys. So we have a few slides addressing various types of intellectual property that we plan to go through relatively quickly. And then we'll move on to a sort of Q&A session focusing on developing patent and trademark portfolios, including developing a plan for patenting new inventions and launching new brands. We'll also touch on ways to enforce patents and trademarks, including watching for knockouts and combating counterfeits. So with that, I'll pass it along to Beth.
Thanks, everybody. So we're going to start by just giving a really broad overview of the potential types of IP rights that you may have heard of. The thinking is that you may have experience with some of them, but not with others. So we're just going to give you kind of the high level view. There's actually additional slides with more detail in this presentation, which will be made available separately. And of course, if you ever have any questions, all of us are willing to answer. So generally speaking, there are 5 main types of IP rights. I'm going to talk about utility patents and design patents. Danny's going to talk about trademarks and copyrights, and Dan is going to finish up by going over briefly trade secrets. So what is a utility patent? Well, as opposed to some other types of IP rights, a utility patent is actually a right that is examined by the United States Patent and Trademark Office, which we sometimes call the PTO. And it's part of a social contract where the inventor discloses their idea, and in exchange for that, they get a government granted monopoly for a limited time in which they can exclude others from using their idea. There's no requirement that you make the item, but you do have the ability, after you've fully disclosed it in your patent, to keep someone else from making what you have claimed in your patent. But utility patents are not the only kind of patent. So there are other kinds of patents. This is what most people think of when they think of a patent, and it generally covers how something works or how something is made. There's another type of patent which is becoming increasingly better known, and this is the design patent. And as I mentioned during the introduction, this is what I specialize in. Design patents prevent, just like utility patents, prevent others from making, using, or selling the claimed design. So as you can see on the slide here, this is actually a design patent for a stationary exercise bike. And so again, it has a claim just like a utility patent, and it would keep someone else from making a design that looks substantially the same as the design that's claimed in the patent. Design patents have another benefit, which you may have heard about, which was the subject of the Apple v. Samsung case, in which there is an additional remedy statute, meaning that there's an additional law that allows for upon a finding of infringement, for the patent owner to win the total profits made by the infringer on the article that the design has been applied to. Finally, another thing to know about design patents is they last 15 years from the date that they issue from the patent office. This is a little different from utility patents. They have a term that is based on the date that the first patent in the family was filed, which means that sometimes it can be more difficult to figure out when they actually expire. Now, Danny's going to talk a little bit about trademarks.
Thanks, Beth. So trademarks is really the area of branding that you tie with your great inventions. And your trademarks are what consumers see and associate with you in particular, your reputation, the quality of your products. So they're very important in the sense that they are really representation of you and your company. And trademarks can take various different forms, as you can see on the slide. Trademarks can be the words themselves. They can be the way the product packaging looks. They can be slogans. They can be stylized logos, as you see here. And you can recognize, even though all of these say Crest toothpaste, you can easily recognize each one of them for the brands that you've long associated with these particular styles and packaging. And that is how a trademark functions to identify one particular source with the product or service. The trademarks can extend beyond just the words to what we call a trade dress, and trade dress can take many different forms. Apple has obtained the registration for the way that its store looks, the arrangement of the tables relative to one another and to the overall design of the store itself. When people see that story, and if you had removed the Apple logo at the top, most folks would know right away that's the Apple store. And they know that because they've seen the same overall look and feel of that store over and over and over again, and have come to associate it with one particular brand. So when you think about trademarks, really there are infinite possibilities of what a trademark could be. It could be the way a store looks. It could be the design of a car, like the Volkswagen Beetle. It could be the shape of a Coca-Cola bottle. It could be a sound that you hear, a smell, a particular type of movement. So long as consumers are associating it with one particular source, it's functioning as a trademark and is protectable under the US trademark law. So copyright is sort of the third of the four different areas of intellectual property that we're discussing today. Copyright is really any form of expression that's fixed in a tangible form. The most common things that come to mind are books, movies, music, those sorts of things, photographs and images, your websites, the materials that you create, your marketing materials that you create for consumers. All of those things can be protected under copyright law. And in recent history, copyright law has even extended to the design of cheerleading uniforms for varsity. And the bounds of copyright law are kind of expanding more and more along those lines. It's an exciting area.
All right, trade secrets. So we have a couple examples here. I think generally it's, what the secret sauce is. So we have Coke's secret formula as an example. We have, the Colonel's secret recipe for fried chicken. But generally a trade secret is some form of business or technical information that has economic value. It gets its economic value by being not publicly known or generally publicly known, and there's reasonable efforts to keep that information secret or confidential. And there are reasons why companies want to protect their IP in the form of trade secret. For example, Beth was mentioning the social contract in a patent where an inventor has to disclose the invention essentially to the public in exchange for a limited time exclusive right to exclude others from practicing that invention. Well, some information is so valuable that a company doesn't want to disclose that at all. They want to keep it within the company, and in doing so, they can protect it potentially for an infinite amount of time. So one example could be in this particular space, if there's a secret sauce to a snowboard or ski wax, or that process has some value to it, the company may want to keep that a trade secret as opposed to disclosing that and getting that limited time exclusive right in a form of a patent.
Thank you all. So now we're going to transition to the Q&A part of our program, and we're going to dive into some of these types of intellectual property. And I think where we're thinking of coming from is, now you've developed a new invention, or perhaps you even have a single patent or a single trademark, and we're going to give you some tips for how can you build on that. And so we're going to start out with, Dan, you help companies of all sizes develop patent portfolios. Where should a company begin when considering how to protect their innovations?
I think from the get-go, one of the key areas to look at is the business goal for that company and what it wants to do with its innovations. So in doing that, you identify what's important to the company, and you can tailor your portfolio development in that way. So some of these goals, for example, include offensive goals. Are you trying to monetize this technology by licensing it out? Are you trying to generate value by essentially keeping others from practicing that patent and that innovation? Or they're defensive goals. Are you trying to protect a company's commercial products with the patent? Is the company trying to protect itself from lawsuits from other companies by negotiating rights and kind of deferring or trading away some of its rights to get out of disputes? And then there's the overall technology goals of the company. It's by seeking patent protection, you're also promoting future innovation, and you're also rewarding the hardworking folks in R&D, and having that rewarding feeling of being an inventor on a patent.
So once a company decides what their goals are, like surrounding their innovations and how they would protect them, what steps should they take to achieve those goals?
Right. I think one of the first steps they should take is ensure that the entire company, from the business side, the R&D side, and the legal side, have bought into the value of IP and the specific goals that the company wants to seek by protecting its IP and specifically patents. And once you have that set, you want to start identifying and harvesting the key inventions in the company, and that's usually through what's called an innovation program. And that's just a streamlined system so that inventions are captured, recorded, and there isn't anything that slips through the cracks. You're not losing any IP rights. This could be something called a disclosure form, where an inventor can go on electronically and just fill out a basic survey of what the innovations are. And then once you have those recorded, you'd want to have regular meetings to evaluate and decide which innovations are worth pursuing via patent protection. And in doing so, I think you need to involve people in business as well as legal and R&D, just so everybody has an idea of what's significant.
So you mentioned filing the applications, and once a company has gotten some patents issued, for example, and they've started building their portfolio, what else should they consider?
Well, once a company has a portfolio, I think you don't want to put the portfolio in the closet and let it gather dust. I think you want to regularly and periodically look into what the portfolio has and figure out where the holes are, so that you're continuing to innovate and protect the key aspects of the company in terms of IP. And then you also want to kind of cut out stuff or patents that the company's no longer interested in, or the direction of the company's not going that way. That way you're saving costs and not paying for fees and keeping or maintaining a patent. And you also want to think prospectively for the portfolio in terms of where the market's going, where the commercial significance is. That way, you go back to harvesting inventions, you figure out what's worthwhile, and you can add on to that portfolio.
Thanks, Dan. So Beth, you similarly advise companies regarding patent portfolio development. And you heard Dan explain advice he gives to companies relating to their patent portfolio development. And he generally spoke about harvesting key inventions and filing applications relating to those inventions. Now, with your expertise in design patents, where do design patents fall into this calculus?
Well, in many ways, design patents are very similar to utility patents in the sense of how you obtain them, and a lot of the rules that Dan spoke about all apply equally to designs. One of the things that can be a bit challenging is that the designers in this case really do know what's new in their field, and they usually have a sense of what's going to be popular. So we want to use a similar sort of invention harvesting technique to make sure that designers are aware that their inventions or designs can be protected, and that we make sure to get those applications on file before certain deadlines pass. So that's one thing that's really important to understand about patents is that as opposed to some other types of intellectual property, we operate very much on a deadline system. And so times can expire and you're not able to file for patents at a certain point. And so it's really important to gather the ideas quickly, make a determination about whether or not you should file, and go ahead and file. Specifically with respect to design patents, I think that there's sort of three broad categories that companies look at. They look at designs that they think that are going to be copied by a competitor, or designs that might be closely, not exactly completely copied, but maybe sort of a look-alike design. And so that directs the kind of application you might want to file. The other areas are many companies rely on design patents to assist them in maintaining a revenue stream for replacement parts or consumables. It's not as popular in the sports and fitness area, but it's very popular. It's like in the medical device area where a particular portion of something may be used up or it's a single use only. And so companies may look to that replacement part as being a really important revenue stream. As Dan talked about, you want to think about what's important to the company. And many times making money is important to the company. And so we want to preserve the ability to do that. I would say the third reason people use design patents is because they have a particular design that is emblematic, or they hope it's emblematic of their company. And there may be a particular design feature that they want to embed in multiple different products over time. And so there may be an opportunity there to consider protecting that portion feature that you may choose to use in other places. And Daniel will talk about this later, but really identifying those features can be important if you're going to try to later get trademark protection on them. I would say the last thing is that it's important to understand that sometimes people think of design patents as being kind of a poor man's utility patent, and it's really not. It's a different tool that has a different purpose. It can be less expensive to obtain than a utility patent, but typically design patents come in groups. So you typically need more than one design patent to adequately protect your design. So again, I think the important thing I want people to understand is it's different and complementary to utility patents, but it is not a substitute. It kind of depends on the life cycle. A lot of times we see utility patenting done earlier in the process when someone develops perhaps a new material that might be great for, I'm going to totally steal Dan's idea here. If you have a new snowboard and you're making it out of a new material, you may have that material design known. You may know how to make that material well before you actually have the product designed. So we see utility patents coming a little earlier. We see design patents coming closer to the time when the final product has been sort of designed and figured out. And so they can be complementary. They can come at different times. Another thing you see with design patents is that sometimes if you have not changed the underlying functionality, but you have refreshed the design in some way, then it may be a good idea to get a design patent, even though there might not be any new technology. Either way, either for designs or utility, you have to keep in mind that there's sort of two broad things to keep in mind. One, the thing you're claiming itself needs to be new, and it also needs to be what we would think of as not an obvious step or variant from something that existed before. So that's part of that social contract that we talked about. You get this right to exclude because you really are contributing something new. And what we find, at least in the design spaces, is that oftentimes companies are their own worst enemy. That the problem they're dealing with is they haven't changed enough from what they did last season. And it's a bit of a balance to think about and to use your IP money wisely to protect those things that are new, because it can be a real shame to put together a whole application, take it to the patent office, and then find out that you're really running up against a lot of, we would call it prior art, which would be prior designs or prior inventions that might keep you from getting the patent that you had hoped to get.
Danny, switching gears, how do you advise clients about where to start when developing their trademark portfolio? Is it a matter of simply pursuing trademark registrations for the company name and the logo, or should they also consider registering product names?
Excellent question, Aaron. So a trademark portfolio ideally will always precede a commercial launch of a business, a product line, a specific product or service. You really want to be forward-looking in filing for protection of your trademarks. Once you're in the market, if you haven't done the due diligence around whether the mark is even available to use, much less how best to protect it, to fend off copycats or to facilitate business objectives like licensing, you can find yourself in hot water. So really thinking ahead of any marketplace launch is the best strategy. And as part of that thought process, considering the short and long-term implications of the brand that you're launching. Is this going to be our company name that's going to stick with us, for 100+ years? Is this a seasonal product that we're launching? Is it a tagline that we're going to use in an ad campaign for the next 3 months, for example? You want to treat all of those differently, potentially. And you want to build a trademark portfolio that's protective in nature, and that you're ensuring that you can use these assets without disruption, or if there is any objection that comes, you're likely to prevail. And also to open doors to the business and to create opportunities for you, not only perhaps in your domestic jurisdiction, but forward thinking even abroad. Where are we going to sell this product? Who are our customers? The world is becoming a smaller and smaller place. And so it is becoming, actually, in my practice, less common that we would only contemplate protecting trademark rights in the United States, even for US companies, even for that matter, for US startups. Thinking globally sooner than later is really important, particularly if you're going to think about manufacturing or entering markets like China, where trademark filings are incredibly high. The volume of trademark filings are incredibly high, which means the register there is becoming more and more crowded, and it's becoming that much more difficult to get a trademark through. So planning ahead of time is really critical. Thinking short and long term is really critical. And then really taking stock of, what are our trademarks and how, what warrants a registration and protection protocols around it. We had in the slides several different examples of what could be a trademark. Really, the universe is as far as the imagination can go. But you want to make sure that things like your company name, for example, McDonald's. You want the crown jewel, the subject of registrations, and you're going to want to take the broadest kind of outlook for something like that. Thinking about logos, so to go back to McDonald's, the famous M arches, registering that. Product marks like the Big Mac, for example, and even packaging, like think of the Happy Meal packaging. All of those things could be protectable, and the Happy Meal packaging perhaps could be protected by a design patent, trade dress, and copyright, just to kind of show how the intersection of all those come into play. And Beth and I often work hand in hand to develop complementary strategies to protect designs for both product and packaging through design patents and trademarks. One very big advantage to trademarks is that they can last forever. So long as you use the mark, at least in the United States, and you maintain your registration, you can have rights to that mark infinitely. So it's a very valuable tool from that perspective.
Thanks, Danny. And this next question, I'll probably come to each of you for it, but Dan, I'll start with you. So after you've worked hard with a client or a company and invested time and effort into helping them get patents, what should the company do after they've obtained those patents to protect their investment?
Thanks, Aaron. I think number one, they should find which products are covered by the patents they just got, and they should mark those products with those patent numbers. I've gone to trade shows where we'll talk to folks and they'll talk about their great innovations and how these innovations there's no patent marking on it. There's no notice to the public that this product is actually protected by a patent. What happens legally then is you're not entitled to damages essentially for any infringement by not marking your patented product. Otherwise, you'd have to provide actual notice to the infringer. So it's important to mark your patented products, on a legal for the legal side because of damages issues. But it's also important to mark your patented products from a marketing and business side as you're promoting your innovations. You're promoting that you're a company that innovates and protects its patented products.
So for companies in the outdoor industry, how can they mark the patented products? Are there multiple ways to do that?
Right. So you could I'll take a set of skis, for example. You can physically mark the skis with the patent numbers, or you can do what's called virtual marking, where you put a little decal on the ski that says patented, and you provide the website, a company website that's easily accessible. And on that website, it'll list out all the patent numbers that cover that patented product. There's a lot of practical benefits to doing virtual marking. It's a lot easier to update with new patents. It's easier to remove patents that are no longer covering that product. And it's also just, easier if let's say you have a long list of patents, just not practical to list them all out on a ski, for example. And you can mark on the packaging of a product, so long as you're not able to do it on the product itself. So if you have for example, a lug nut for a binding that's patented, you can't physically mark that product. You can mark its packaging.
Okay. So Danny, are trademarks similar, or is there a way that a company can identify to others that a particular logo or word is trademarked?
So there are ways that you can notify others of your trademark rights. One, at least in the US, you can use the TM symbol if your mark is not registered. If it's federally registered, you can use the circle R symbol. You can also identify your trademarks on your website and other materials. But counterfeiters typically pay little attention to that. If your product is successful, you unfortunately can almost assure yourself that the counterfeiters will follow. And so getting a federal registration for your mark provides some enhanced options for you to stop those counterfeiters in federal court, and through other means gives you the ability to pursue takedowns on various online platforms. And without those registrations, that can be more challenging. It also entitles you to enhanced damages against a counterfeiter should you be able to get to their real identity and their funds, which can also be challenging. But because counterfeiters tend to be savvy, they may not always use your name, right? They may not always market their product as the Big Mac. So looking to other aspects of protection through trademark and design patents is really important. Getting into those unique, distinctive product characteristics that the counterfeiters will likely copy, even though they're not going to use your name, and using those rights to stop the counterfeiters. So having kind of a strategy across your IP, your utility, design, patents, as well as your trademarks, is really important to have some robust tools at your hand to stop counterfeiters as efficiently as is possible. And you also want to be very careful in what you do in the utility patent side and what you claim in your design patent and trademarks. The three are complementary, but you want to be careful that they don't collide in certain ways. So counterfeiting, it's a big problem in the consumer goods category, and paying close attention to that and how it impacts your business and what can be done, and really what can be done that's sensible and effective from a cost perspective is the biggest challenge. You know, you'll never stop counterfeiting 100%, but there are ways to build a portfolio to really give you an edge in trying to reduce as much as possible the impact of counterfeits on your business.
So you mentioned, how the portfolio will help you there, but how do you practically deal with those counterfeit issues? Are there ways of stopping, counterfeit goods from coming into the country, for example?
It's a great question. Once you have the federal registration, you can work with U.S. Customs to record your trademarks with them and to educate them on your trademarks and the products that are real versus those that are counterfeit, so that they are equipped with the knowledge that once, if they're getting containers in of counterfeit products, your mark will be registered with them. They'll have the education to spot those products and seize them and notify you so that you can take the appropriate action to stop them from hitting the shelves. The same is available through customs in many other countries. So that is an important aspect of fighting the battle. Online monitoring is another very useful tool to find counterfeits online and get them pulled down and then to investigate who's behind the counterfeits and to try and stop the continued manufacturing of them. But one additional protection in terms of registration is thinking about where are your products made and where are counterfeits likely to be made, and ensuring that you're registering in all of those places. You want to have registration ideally where you're making the product, even if you're not selling there, to ensure protection for your brand. And you want to have registrations where counterfeits are often coming from, so that you can take enforcement in that jurisdiction before it hits the shelves in the markets where you're conducting business.
So Beth, are there also ways on the design patent side that you can work with customs to enforce those design patents?
Well, hopefully there will be. What I would say is that design is not as advanced as trademark is in terms of hopefully stopping things at the border, at least not in the United States. It is possible in many parts of the world, including Europe and Japan and Korea and even China, to stop goods that infringe local design rights. So it's what Danny said, you can't, you have to keep in mind that patent rights are territorial. So the US design patent doesn't do you any good in China. You need a Chinese right. And so what Danny said is absolutely right, that you need to think about where your products are made, where competitors are going to make their products. And at least with respect to design, you do have more options at customs outside of the United States, at least right now. There was a bill introduced in the last Congress that was called the Counterfeit Goods Seizure Act. And it didn't make it out of Congress for a wide variety of reasons because Congress is very busy, but it did have a lot of bipartisan support. It was supported by Senators Cassidy, Tillis, Coons, and Hirano. And the idea would be basically to allow design patents to largely mimic the system that we have set up for trademarks. You would take your issued design patent and you would register it with customs, and then customs would have the ability to stop goods at the border that infringed that design patent. It's a well supported, especially in sort of the outdoor and fitness area. It was supported by the Footwear Distributors and Retailers of America, because footwear has a serious problem with what they're calling the new counterfeiting, which is goods that look exactly like authentic goods, but they don't have the trademark on them. In some cases, there's no trademark ever placed on them. And in other cases, the trademarks are actually mailed separately. And so you just have like a small envelope of trademarks or maybe a box of trademarks that's going somewhere. The shoes are coming separately, and then the trademark is being attached to the product inside the United States. And when that happens, if customs stops something, they're stopping a box of trademarks, right? I mean, so they're not stopping the most valuable piece. And so a part of this bill was intended to try to stop that activity. We have high hopes that it will be reintroduced. Obviously, the pandemic has created some issues there, but it is an important area that I think a number of senators and other congressmen do recognize that probably needs to be addressed. What I would say is that design is a little bit behind trademarks, but as I've mentioned, I think that some of the counterfeiters are getting a little bit smarter about how they're doing things. And so we need to sort of step up our game in terms of enforcement of design rights.
Great. Well, thank you, Beth. I think that does it for our Q&A session of all that we have planned. We thank all of you for your time, for listening, and we will be available for questions for the next short while. So thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you in person next year.